Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift is a satire fantasy book, classic literature. So I have a special place in my heart for Gulliver because my aunt, when I was really young, she gave me this giant box of books, the Baronet Books series by Signet Classics, I believe they're called. They're like sort of abridged versions of classics for children with pictures, some pictures, but a lot of classics were adapted. So I read Count of Monte Cristo and Robinson Crusoe and Swiss Family Robinson. But one of them was Gulliver's Travels, and a lot of adaptations of this story sort of just do a couple parts of the book and not all of it. The book is divided into 4 voyages. The first one being the most popular that we've seen, where he goes to Lilliput, a land where everyone is 1/12 the size of a normal human. So he wakes up on the beach in the sun, and he's tied down by all these, by an army basically, and they can hurt him by shooting him with arrows. So he basically is their prisoner. So they manage to tie him to a contraption, like a sled of sorts, and drag him back to the capital, where he becomes a sort of curiosity for the court. And however, the infighting of the court, they don't want him to have that much power because he's like a giant, and since Lemuel costs so much to feed and clothe while he's staying there, a lot of the king's sycophants try to push him out politically. So he has to escape, and he ends up running to the other side of the country with the other people. And there's some good social satire with the egg thing. They're basically at war over what side to break your egg in the morning. You know, I understood the satire, but this is the most popular part of the story. It's been adapted in many things, like the terrible Jack Black movie and a Crayola Kids Adventure movie, I remember. And yeah, so that's the most popular. The second one is one of my personal favorites because I really enjoyed reading it as a kid. It's the Land of Giants, where he goes to Brobdingnag, and that's a land where everyone is a giant towards him. So everyone's supersized, so he ends up getting taken by a sort of farmhand, and he basically is a curiosity for the farmer, and develops a really strong friendship with the farmer's daughter. And he ends up getting sold to the palace, where he has to deal with this jealous dwarf and creatures, because like everything tries to kill him because he's so small. It's definitely my favorite part of the book because of the great social satire that's not put in the kids version, but there's a really great talk he has with the emperor of the country, really great social satire. And the biggest problem with this book is the second half. The second half of the book is such a drag, and I was going to give this book such a high score, but then, man, basically Lemuel goes on another series of adventures. This one, the Laputians. I think this was the inspiration for Hayao Miyazaki's Laputa Castle in the Sky, because it's a land full of different islands that you can move them around, and they're basically bogged down. That's the end of the influence for the Miyazaki movie. But in the book, they're very bureaucratic, and they try to do weird stuff, and a lot of funding is given to weird people. Like there's a man who's in charge of taking poop and trying to turn it back into food and stuff like that. So I don't know what I guess he was trying to talk about the social satire of just, I guess, grant money, I guess, being wasted by weirdos. It kind of went over my head, and there's a lot of different little islands that he goes to. That voyage ends abruptly. The largest one being the land of the Huanims and the Yahoos. I didn't like this segment of the book. It was such a drag. Basically, in a nutshell, the land of the Huanims are a horse-like people, and they're really smart, and they have troglodyte people called the Yahoos, and kind of like the inverse of like a horse-human relationship, and Lemuel basically hangs out with them for a really long time, and the satire is so boring for that segment. I didn't like it at all. It was such a slog to get through, and I almost DNF'd the book, like, even though I was finished like 80 to 90% of it. I had to literally take my audiobook and skip it to 1.6. It was like a torture. Literally, it was like you just have to play this chapter for for interrogations, and the people will just be like, turn it off, I'll tell you anything. It was that bad. So ultimately I have to give Gulliver's Travels a 2 out of 5, even though I enjoyed the first 2 voyages. The third and fourth one really brought it down to like boredom levels. Like, it's a shame, but I understood the satire of the most part, and it is a classic, but I didn't like the second half of the book. So 2 out of 5.